Let's see if you got this. So we're going to start on the main roof over here. The valleys are actually considerably simpler than the hips. So on our main roof, we're going to start with the common. What's the span of our common on the main roof? 40 feet. What's the slope? 612. Which means we have a run here of 20 feet and a height of 10 feet. How many of you got that much? Okay, I was hoping to see 4 hands come up there. To make J here, it's going to be the square root of 10 squared plus 20 squared, which is how much? 22,361 sounds good to me. So that is this length right here, 22.361 feet. So I have this triangle that we're going to pull out and look at. This is 22.361. What's this? In other words, this piece right here. 9, half of the 18. Very good. So then the next triangle, which would be right here, is going to be how big? Yeah, 7 on top, X on the side. So 7 to 9 equals X to 22.361. So we're going to do 22.361 times 7 divided by 9. 17.392? 392. So we've got 22.361 minus 17.392. $4.969? Yes? You just had to round off there. Always go 3 digits with these. 3 digits. 3 whole digits. So next, the L roof side. Remember, this here is the L roof. What's our span? 18. What's our slope? Don't know what our slope is. But we know our height is 10 feet. And we know the run is 9 feet. So this is the square root of 9 squared plus 10 squared. Which gives us 13,454. Very good. So that's this here is 13.454 feet. So let me draw me a triangle there. Come on, there we go. We'll pull that one out. We know this is the 13.454 here. What's this side right here? What's this? Half the span, half of the 40, so it's 20. So then our next triangle is going to be here. What do we know about that? This is a 40-foot span, half the span. Half the span of the other roof. So that makes this 18, and this will be X. So 18 over 20 equals X over 13.454. So 13.454 times 18 divided by 20. 12.108. So we're going to subtract 13.454 minus 12.108 is going to be 1.346 feet. Yes? Anybody, both of them? Anybody get just one of them? Okay. Today, we are going to start talking about stair openings. For a stair opening, we have to consider there is a floor up above. FT is going to be our floor thickness. Then we have a ceiling height that goes with the lower level ceiling, the level below the floor. On the stairs, we have what's called a unit rise, which is often just the riser height. We have a unit run, which is just the tread width. The tread width is generally specified. The unit rise is generally given a specified range and then adjusted from there. Have you guys gone over stairs at all yet? No. Okay. Does anybody know what the desired unit rise is? No. Code used to allow anything between 6 and 9. Now they usually go 7 to 8. You can be down to 5 inches. It's just extremely weird to walk up a 5-inch stair. You can still go up to a 9-inch, but you're limited because it used to be if you had a 9-inch rise, you could have a 9-inch tread. It's the rule of 18 they called it. Is your riser plus your tread was supposed to equal 18. So a 7-inch rise gave you an 11-inch tread. Now I believe you have a minimum of a 10-inch tread. It's not 9 inches anymore. Just because a 9-inch tread, if you're walking down it, you almost have to turn your foot sideways because it's uncomfortable because only your heel is hitting the tread. For our purposes, we're going to usually use a 10 or 11-inch tread. It'll be specified with the problem. Unit rise, we are going to shoot for 7 inches. A 7 by 11 is perfect. That's what I always tried to do, was a 7 by 11. Sometimes you had to adjust. Now, the reason a 7 by 11 works so well, give you a little bit of framing here. So let's say here is your stringer for the stairs. If this was 7 inches here for my riser, I could put an 11 inches for my, I could put a 2x6 here. Up top for my tread, I could put two 2x6s. Well, this is 5.5, and 5.5 makes 11 inches. This is 5.5, and 1.5 makes 7 inches. So it worked out perfectly using 2x6s to frame it up if you get it at 11 by 7. Now, of course, it doesn't always work quite that perfectly. Generally, I always try to cheat a little bit above 11 if I have to cheat rather than a little bit below. I'd rather that riser be a touch more than 7 than a touch less. Different companies have different preferences. Different people have different preferences. So that's my preference and what I'm saying we're going to do for this class. Well, the first thing we have to find, number 1, is to find the total rise. That is generally your ceiling height plus your floor thickness. So let's say that my ceiling height is 97 1/8 inch. That is a standard ceiling height, 8 foot 1 1/8. Does anybody know why we use 8 foot 1 1/8? If you use 8 foot 1 1/8, you put 5/8 sheetrock on the ceiling, right? Now that's 8 foot and half an inch. You put 2 rows of 4 foot sheetrock on the wall. That gives you a 1/2 inch to spare. The reason we use that 1/2 inch to spare is, why wouldn't we? Because if you try to do it exactly 8 feet, guess what? Any unevenness in your floor, you're going to have to trim your sheetrock. So that 1/2 inch to spare does 2 things, actually. It makes sure you don't have to trim that bottom sheet of sheetrock. And 2, it makes sure that if the floor gets wet or whatever, it's not touching the bottom of that sheetrock unless it really gets wet. So it protects the bottom of the sheetrock as well. Also, flooring, you do tile and stuff like that. It's nice to have that 1/2 inch of clearance. So if you get to the wall, the tile can slide underneath the sheetrock a little bit, or even carpet. You put your tack strip right up to it and run it in. It allows you to hide the edges of your flooring. It's huge if you're doing laminate or tile. Is really the best. What it does the best job for. So anyway, that's our ceiling height. Our floor thickness here, let's say that we are going to do 14 7/8 inches. I chose the 7/8 just because, well, you can probably tell why. So I have ceiling height 97 1/8 plus a floor thickness of 14 7/8. And yes, it is easier if these are all in inches. That's 112 inches I just got. $9'4", well, that comes out to be. Next, step 2. Find the actual unit rise. In other words, the actual riser height. So to do that, so step 2A is to divide total rise divided by our goal unit rise. Remember we said that was 7 inches. Now for this problem, 112 inches divided by 7 inches gives us what? 16. (16) is the number of rises we will have. Since that came out to be exact, that means our unit rise is going to be 7 inches. Okay? This here, total rise divided by the goal unit rise, gives us the number of rises. So we got, that came out to be exactly 16 rises, so the goal rise of 7 inches actually comes out even. Let's do another example. So our ceiling height, 7 foot 10 1/2 inch. Now I just made a big deal about that 8 foot 1 1/8 and why we try to do it. Why would there not be 8 foot 1 1/8 in a basement? Well, a concrete basement, a lot of times you have an 8 foot wall with a 1.5 inch sill, but then you pour your concrete and your concrete goes above the wall footing. So it goes part way up. So it's very, very common to have 7'9", 7'10" basements. So let's say our floor thickness here is going to be, let's put it at 15 1/4 inches. So the first thing I got to do is to find my total rise, correct? And to do that, I have to convert my ceiling height into all inches. So 7 times 12 is 84. Plus my 10.5, that's 94.5 inches. Right? What am I going to do to that? Add my 15 1/4, which is going to give me 109 3/4. That's my total rise. Step 2, I'm going to adjust this a little bit. Instead of listing it all as one step and doing A, B, and C, I'm just going to list it as separate steps. Find the number of rises. So to find the number of rises, it is total rise divided by that 7 inches, that proposed rise. So we've got 109 3/4 divided by 7. So I'll put it into my calculator, 109.75 divided by 7 is going to give us 15.679. So 7 inches would give us 15.679 rises. What's wrong with that number? You got to have a whole number. You can't have part of a rise. Makes it really awkward if you go walking up or down the stairs if one of the rises is only partial. If you're going down, you get that really heavy step at the bottom because you're expecting it to go down this far and it only goes down that far, right? You ever had that happen? Yeah, it's really not fun, especially as you get older. It hurts. So what we need to do is we need to adjust every rise to match it. Now we need to decide, would we rather have this slightly less than 7 inches or slightly more than 7 inches? Okay. So we have two choices here. We can either go with 15 rises or we can go with 16 rises. Now, I told you that we were going to want to go slightly more than 7 inches. So for us, we would use which one? 15, right? Less rises means more unit rise. Let me show you what I mean. We go back to the 109 3/4, 109.75. We're going to divide by 15 this time. $7.31 is exact. So 7.31 inches. So that is 7, and the 0.31 times 16 is 4.96, so 5/16. So 7 and 5/16, just a little bit more than 7 1/4. Had I gone with 16 rises, we would have done 109.75 divided by 16. Would have been 6.86 basically inches. So that's going to be 6 inches. Subtract the 6 here times 16. 13.7, so 14 16ths or 7/8. So 6 and 7/8 inches. Either one of those is fine. I mean, okay, I'm an 1/8 inch short of 7 or 5/16, just over a 1/4 inch taller than 7. Either one of those is going to work just fine. But we said for our purposes, we're going to choose to be slightly more. Just because why not? It's easier to frame one less step than it is to frame one extra step. When it comes to carpeting and stuff like that too, it's a lot easier to carpet a blessed step. So our unit rise, what we just found then, we did step 3. Find the actual unit rise, which is what we just did right there. 7 5/16 inches. So that's not so bad, right? Yes? No? Not bad at all. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys an example here. So if you have a ceiling height, 7 foot 9 3/4 inches. A floor thickness of 13 7/8 inches. Go through the process. Find the actual unit rise for me. Bless you. So what'd you get for the total rise? 107 5/8. Perfect. So then, when you found the number of rises, you had 107, I'll put 0.625, divided by 7. What'd you get? 15.375. So we can either go with 15 or 16. We wanted to go slightly larger, so we're going to go with 15 rises. So there are 15 rises we're going to use. To find the actual rise, the actual unit rise, or the actual riser height, 107 5/8, 107.625, divided by 15. $7.175. So that is 7 inches, 3/16. Okay, I'm just going to double check. So minus the 7 times 16, 2.8. It is 3/16. How many of you had 7 3/16 inches? How many of you had no clue how we got 7 3/16 inches? I don't know. You know how you got there? You just made a mistake? Good. I can leave the stick in the sheath. Okay. So, our next step. We have our floor thickness, we have our stairs going down here. Common problem on stairs, of course, looks something like this. Bopping his head on the floor, right? To avoid that, we have codes for something called head clearance. Now, these codes have changed several times, so I'm going to use a simplest form of this. I believe the current code involves putting a plane at the nose of each step like this, and head clearance is measured straight down to that plane. Does that make sense? We're not going to be quite that particular about it. We're going to make it a little bit simpler than that. Code, minimum code. For head clearance is 6 foot 4 inches, or 76 inches of head clearance. I use minimum head clearance (6 foot 8 inches). By using that minimum head clearance of 6 foot 8 inches, now that's minimum. I almost always have more than that. Pretty much guarantee that if I put that plane down the nose of my steps, I'm going to have my 6 foot 4. The reason I always go with 6 foot 8 is at 6 foot 4, even if you have 6 foot 4 of head clearance here, if you're standing here and leaning forward just a little bit as you step down, you're still going to knock the top of your head. I would rather have 5 feet of head clearance than 6 foot 4. Because at 6 foot 4, it's right here. You don't see it coming. At 5 feet, it's right in front of your face. You know it's coming. You turn and you duck out of it. So anyway, to find the head clearance, to deal with head clearance, we first must find the required drop. The required drop is the minimum head clearance, HC minimum, plus the floor thickness. So let's say we have 13 3/4 inch floor, and I am using my 6 foot 8 head clearance. 6 foot 8, of course, is how many inches? 80 inches. So we have 80 inches plus 13.75 is 93.75 inches. That's our required drop. That means from here to here has to be 93.75 inches down to have 6 foot 8 here. Make sense? We've got to be 6 foot 8 below the bottom of the floor, not the top of the floor. Step 2. Required number of risers or unit rises. So let's say that we have a riser of 7 foot, or 7 foot, a riser of 7 1/4 inch. Okay? That's given. We didn't calculate that. I had to give that to you. So the required number of risers is going to take my required drop divided by my unit rise. So my 93.75 divided by my 7.25. We get 12.93. This number here, I don't care if that's 12.1. Always round up. So that means we need 13 rises. So what does that mean? That means to get 13 rises here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I have to have a certain number of treads exposed. And I have to get a stair opening here. And really the stair opening is the most important part of this calculation. We have to know how big of a hole do we have to have in our floor to run this stairway. So step 3, the required number of treads, the required number of unit runs. This one's really easy. 13 rises takes how many runs? Always one less. Why? Well, if you look at a stairway, you have a step on top from the floor down to the first step. You have a step on bottom from the last step down to the floor. You always get one more rise than you do run. Step 4 is to find the stair opening then. Stair opening is number of runs times the tread, or times the unit run. I'm going to give you again that the tread is 11 inches. So we have 12 runs times 11 inches, which gives us 132 inches. Yay. Otherwise known as 11 feet. Is our stair opening. Step 5 is the actual head clearance. The actual head clearance. Number of rises times unit rise minus floor thickness. So we said 13 rises times 7.25 inches minus that floor thickness of 13 point, what was it, 7/8? 13 3/4. So 13.75. So 13 times 7.25 minus 13.75. 80.5 inches. So we actually have a head clearance of a ½ inch more than what we were shooting for. We were shooting for 80, we got 80.5. What do you think? It is a lot of steps. I think it's time for us to take a break. So let's take 10 minutes. We'll be back here about 10:33, and we're going to keep going with this.